Hello, all. We are live on this latest episode of The Dictators, and a shout out to all my friends in Mexico. Happy or Viva Cinco de Mayo. Today is May 5th, which is Mexican Independence Day, Mexico's Independence Day from Spain. So happy Cinco de Mayo. And hopefully you won't have the same kind of problems that are going on today in the Middle East. Which is where we're going to start today. I talked to Jonathan, and we're going to talk about it too, as he calls it, War of the Truces. Just all kinds of nonsense going on. But in any event, the ceasefire that wasn't is now not a ceasefire again. Kind of like the phony war, I guess. In the beginning of World War II, it was a phony truce or a phony ceasefire, not a truce. But apparently, anyway, last night, the Iranians launched a rather aggressive drone attack against the UAE, against some of their oil fields. And there were, again, air raid sirens heard over Dubai, which until the latter part of February was not a common occurrence. People went to Dubai to relax and to have a good time, or to live if they had the money. So UAE came under attack again. America, the United States, under Donald Trump and Pistol Pete Hegseth, has still carried on their so-called blockade. They are now bragging about some, I think it was 3, 4, 5, whatever they said, small boats, the small Iranian attack boats that they said that they shot down or blew up with Apache helicopters. Probably true. They've got thousands of them. So if they took out a half a dozen, not a big deal. And I just wanted to show you here one of my favorite people, being Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, is here seen schmoozing with another favorite of mine, again, Pete Hegseth, the so-called Secretary of War in the United States. There they are, just sharing a real funny joke, I'm sure.
And tiny Pistol Pete. Well,
yeah,
they're saying there. Yeah, it's done.
Well, and let me just put this up about old Rutte, what he's saying here about Iran. He said European allies are adjusting course after President Donald Trump's criticism of their lack of involvement in the Iran conflict. NATO's top official and Trump butt kisser said on Monday. Secretary Mark Rutte said leaders have heard Trump's complaints loud and clear, and suggested that allies are preparing for a possible role in assisting the U.S. on matters related to securing the Strait of Hormuz. And according to Rutte, quote, I see more and more European countries pre-position essential logistical and other support. For example, mine hunters for the next phase, Rutte said at the start of a meeting of the European political community in Armenia. He did not give further details. Thank God. I hate when he says anything at all, so I'm glad it was rather short. So after a tongue lashing from Donald Trump, he came back again on his knees, kissing the ring and saying, no problem, sir. Your Highness, we will do whatever we have to do. Now, Jonathan, that's probably going to amount to nothing. But the fact that he's still kissing his butt.
I can translate for Mr. Rutte. No one is going to lift a finger for this illegal war.
Well, why doesn't he tell that to Trump? He just is a cowardly, ineffectual leader of NATO. Wrong guy, wrong time.
He's a manager. He'd be better off managing a McDonald's franchise where he can just boss people around and schmooze the customers and whatever. He is not a leader in any sense. As BME wrote in the comments here, Rutte is a snake. And I've been saying this for a while, that he's extremely dangerous. That essentially Putin does not necessarily want to destroy NATO. Well, he does, but he only wants to destroy it as an effective organization, just as he destroyed all the internal institutions in Russia, which were pretty nascent, it has to be said, but he's destroyed them as being effective. Those that are genuine challenge, he gets rid of. But those which he can turn into zombie institutions and create a fiction of plurality, a fiction of sort of hybrid autocracy, that's what he's done. It suits him and it suits Trump and it suits Rutte, we'll come to that in a minute, to turn NATO into a zombie, into a fictitious defensive organization, an organization that cannot defend anything, that is incapable of doing it. But if it were to be disbanded, then they would start figuring out how to create a real defensive alliance. They don't want that. They want the zombie facade to continue because it suits them that our managerial so-called leaders don't make decisions, don't figure out what the real problem is. As they don't take what is a more Ukrainian attitude to things is, we're not going to do things for the sake of form, for the sake of ticking boxes, for the sake of hypocrisy. If something's broken, kick it to the curb, start again. Don't engage in some form of diplomatic politeness and all these weasel words just because they make you feel good. This is what I think is going on. I mean, the Iran war as an ongoing rumbling conflagration, it suits Putin. Of course it does, because it raises oil prices, it distracts from Ukraine, it sucks up munitions from around the world, and it gets our allies arguing with each other. It is perfect for Putin. It suits Iran because it's helped entrench the regime. They're far better off now than they were when they were facing the internal threats from their people. They were already one of the most sanctioned nations on earth. It doesn't really affect them much. They're getting their oil out, they're getting their resources out. The regime has survived, and it suits Trump. Because have you heard anyone mention Epstein in the last couple of weeks? Where's Epstein gone? Where's the Epstein files? It suits all of them to create a facade of a great power war. Does that mean Trump's going to go in and invade mainland Iran? I don't think he does, because it suits him to have it trundle on and on. Why do they have a sort of small so-called ceasefire? Well, because the 60 days technically ran out in Congress, and he was able to write a letter saying the war is over. 2 days later, boom, it's back on again. Why is it back on? Because it suits the autocrats and tyrants and kleptocrats of the world to keep it rumbling on. So that's a fictitious truce. And we now have a fictitious truce in Ukraine as well, where poor little Vova is genuinely panicking because he can't have his little parade with his toy tanks and his little sort of, meat cubes marching and saluting him and makes him feel good and in power. No, this image wasn't real, but the image of drone nets going up on Red Square was lovely. It was AI generated, it has to be said, but Vova is genuinely, and if people don't know who Vova is, that's Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. He's, I think, genuinely terrified. He apparently, according to some reports, and there are some that say these intel reports are a little bit exaggerated, but it seems he's doing far, far fewer public events, far fewer online events. He is not going to all his residences and properties. He's not appearing in public. I think he's terrified of Ukrainian drones, and he's terrified of drones coming now from his own elites. And more than drones, he's probably not going near any windows. I doubt whether any of his bunkers have
He's been hiding in his bunkers. As you know, he's got a lot of bunkers. And the word is that he's hiding in a lot of bunkers. His FSO, his personal, security guard, presidential security force is just going bonkers as far as, searching everybody, not letting anybody near him within, I don't know how far it is, radius. There's no cell phone communication at all. So although there are periodic blackouts throughout Moscow and even St. Petersburg around the man, you can't speak. It's a blackout. He's afraid of all kinds of stuff.
Terrified he's terrified of his shadow now.
Of the shadow, I mean, everybody's saying a coup is imminent. I think that wasn't true so long ago, but I think the walls are closing in on him. Whether it happens next week, next month, 6 months from now, it's going to happen. And he is not a happy camper. Before we move on to Ukraine, because I do want to talk about Vova some more, I just want to play a brief clip about what has happened overnight in the UAE, because Iran went a little nuts. And, they attacked their oil facilities again, and people in Dubai were scrambling around. So brief clip on the drone attack on the UAE.
Fire is burning at the Fujairah oil industry zone here in the UAE, following renewed Iranian attacks against the country's energy infrastructure. Emirati authorities say that 3 Indian nationals have been moderately injured by this Iranian drone attack, which they say caused a major fire at the country's energy hub. Emergency alerts started to sound on residents' phones late on Monday afternoon across much of the country for the first time since the UAE declared its airspace free from threat on April 9th. Now, the Ministry of Defence says that it has engaged this Monday 12 ballistic missiles, 3 cruise missiles and 4 drones. The UAE condemning the attacks, saying it is a dangerous escalation, an unacceptable transgression, calling for an immediate halt to all attacks, also saying they reserve the full and legitimate right to respond. Schools and universities here in the UAE have switched back to distance learning for the rest of this week as residents readjust to the sadly familiar reality of being under fire from Iran.
So much for the protection of the United States Navy and Air Force for the UAE.
Yeah, where is it? Where is it? And this is the other thing about sort of, open the straits, just open the straits, says Trump. But if the US Navy can't do it, that have significant assets in the region, how are European navies expected to do it? In fact, how logistically are any navies expected to do it? Now, this isn't a sort of a point of strategy I expect Trump to understand, or Hegseth for that matter.
No.
But there are many analysts who are out there like, oh, no, I was disappointed in Europe. Michael McFaul, who I find to be an endless disappointment because he's always so surprised by every authoritarian move Trump makes. And it's like, dude, are you not paying any attention? Seriously? I was a little upset with Europe didn't allow flyovers.
I don't think the UK's in any shape to be sending some naval vessels halfway around the world.
But even if we had a tip-top navy, frankly, it seems to be something of an S-word mission. You're basically sending in a bunch of assets as sitting ducks to get annihilated. I mean, opening that strait is a military challenge which generations of tacticians and strategists in the US have grappled with. They've all decided that you can't take Iran on.
Have you seen the
because
cliffs
you can't
overlooking the straits, that 1,000 or 1,500-foot cliff that runs along the entire strait, where it's riddled with caves, which I'm sure has drones, remote, as well as maybe missiles, you name it, overlooking the straits, which is about 20 or 23 kilometers away. Anybody going through there is a sitting duck if they want to shoot them, including anybody that foolish enough to land on Card Island. But that's another episode.
That's a whole other can of sticky oil or whatever it is. So this is intractable, but I'm thinking, and again, the media will flip-flop around and they'll follow every little jump in the story without joining the dots together. It seems to me that an intractable conflict is exactly what the participants want. And there'll be many people who say, well, that doesn't make any sense because it's damaging the world economy, because it's damaging re-election chances of the GOP, it's damaging this. Unfortunately, I don't think these analytical tools that are based on traditional pre-populist politics are any use, in fact, in predicting what these sort of tyrants and populists and kleptocrats will do. We have to follow the money and focus their individual butt-saving policies and forget about the bigger picture, forget about, their constituency, their base, their core. None of that really matters in this circumstance. And in fact, once again, Trump has demonstrated that he's able to drag a lot of his core with him, even though he may have lost some of the sort of podcast bros along the way, etc. He has not lost overall support by doing any of this, which is another form of cultish madness. Because, if you'd asked me 3 months ago, would Trump's base support a major war in the Middle East that is potentially comparable to Iran or Iraq, you'd have said, that's crazy. There's no way MAGA's going to go along with that. Well, it seems the core of his base don't really give a shit.
You really can't say anymore that, fill in the blank. MAGA won't go along with, and then, like I said, fill in the blank. There is no such thing. There is no depth to which Trump can stoop that MAGA will not support him. I've been saying that for years, even before this current administration, back to when he won the first time and then said he won the second time and, launched a coup. I don't know if you caught it, but he kind of in an offhanded way gave a speech yesterday in his rambling kind of Trumpish gibberish. And he pretty much said that very soon he's kind of bored with Iran right now. So we are going to invade Cuba. And so
course.
that's the next war that he's not going to start. The man who is the peace president who never started a war, and he ended many, many wars, including Star Wars and the War of the Roses, many wars. He's ended them all.
Battlestar Galactica, there's a whole range of wars he's managed to
A
stop.
Star is Born. You name the war, and he's ended it. So no, seriously, I think that, and this is not news. He's talked about it before. Marco Rubio has talked about it before. His relatives come from Cuba. You would think he'd have more of a, anyway, Marco Rubio's another episode. But yeah, so we're going to be going from Iran, which is kind of boring, what's going on right now. You got a ceasefire and all that stuff. Nobody's shooting or bombing anybody. Really, we need a real war, where is, remember the Maine and all that stuff. Let's invade Cuba. I don't know, Bay of Pigs, anything,
one wonders how that's going to go down,
Jonathan.
I know. One wonders how, strategic that's going to go down, whether there is enough of because Cuba is in a shocking state, isn't it? Its infrastructure, everything's falling apart there, as it would after, whatever it is, 80 years of communism, 60 years of communism. Everything's going to stop working. But are there enough people to think, this is great. This is, we're going to overthrow this. Frankly, Iran, I think, has far more democratic credentials, and yet, intervening has not been able to sort of, push that one over the edge. In fact, it seems to have entrenched the regime. So I'm not sure any of these are going to trigger the change. But then maybe triggering change is not what it's all about. As we saw in Venezuela, all they did was replace the person at the top and get a cut of their revenue. Mm-hmm. It's a pure mafia deal where you're paying protection to one guy, we muscle in, now you're paying protection to us.
The new boss, same as the old boss. It's the same political party. All the heads of the military are still there, the heads of the security and secret. It's the same thing, except now Trump's getting a cut. You're right.
And that's what he wants in Cuba. He doesn't care about democracy there. He just wants the guy at the top to change and get a cut of their exports.
To try to prop up Cuba if, in fact, we invaded it and we're responsible for it. Yeah. My God, you talk about a drain on the budget now. I mean, you said it. Look what kind of they're a basket case, and we're going to go in there. But you know what? Trump wouldn't give a damn. He would do what he's going to do. He's not going to
spend a bean on it.
He'd put in his puppet regime or president, whatever, and he'd leave, and they could all die as far as he's concerned, and many of them would.
They would. I mean, you just have to go back to Trump 1 and is it Costa Rica and his attitude to that after a disaster hit? He doesn't give a damn about anyone or anything there. But, if we think of it through the lens of mafia extortion and muscling in on someone else's patch, this stuff starts to make sense. If we think of it in terms of a global play to keep oil prices high, which, let's forget, the US doesn't export as much, but it has more internal. The oil price rise is not going to hit the US quite as hard as it hits everywhere else. So he doesn't, give a damn about that. The end result, of course, is that all of this benefits Vladimir Putin because, one, you've got weapons sucked out of the US. So what kind of a state are you going to be in for the Pacific region, which apparently was the top priority, but all the actions suggest it's not. Those weapons, they've tried to suck them out of Europe. We kind of put our foot down and said, no, you're not having all our air defense equipment. That's insane. And now they're threatening troop withdrawals, which we covered in yesterday's episode. And it's not going to be just simple. Today's speculation is that the Rammstein's going to go. That is that's a dismantling of US global power. It's nothing to do, as one commentator on X put it, these bases don't exist to do Europe a favor. They don't even necessarily exist entirely to protect Europe, although that is one of the purposes. The real purpose is the ability to have logistical force projection around the globe for the US. That is being dismantled in favor of Russian sphere of influence. We've been talking about spheres of influence on this channel on Silicon Curtain for the last 3 years as a concept. Having, dutifully read my Dugin, spheres of influence is a very it's an appalling imperial idea, but it's an essential one to help explain the realignment, because all the chaos we're seeing around the world, once you piece it together, is a realignment of peer superpowers, as it were. Russia becoming subordinate to China, whereas they thought their actions were, helping them to reestablish the superpower status, and the decline of the US. And it's not a managed decline; it's a catastrophic, high-speed, self-inflicted decline.
Cliff decline.
Again, to ultimately benefit China, but Russia doesn't have to be a superpower in order to have hegemony over the European sphere of influence. And I think is the interesting question. The Middle East seems to be up for grabs. It's like a sandbox for kleptocrats and autocrats to sort of bounce around, not control, but use as a point of leverage. African continent is more or less ceded to China at this point, as far as I can see. Europe is being pulled between China and the US. The US is pulling out, but Russia, of course, has designs over Europe and hegemony over it. And not even until Putin falls, it's Putin and whoever replaces him may well continue this policy. It's not going to happen until then. I mean, Rubio. I have maximum respect for radical bite there, but Rubio has shown himself to be worse than Mark Rutte, has shown himself to be spineless in the extreme and able to almost normalize and justify any nonsense that Trump. It's weakness of the first order. So I don't see him becoming leader. I don't see him being a good leader. I don't see him surviving in any case if he were accidentally to become leader.
Follow up to your excellent point about logistics, about the fact that you mentioned that possibly now Ramstein is next. We talked about the 5,000 being pulled out. I heard that was the second Cav in Vilsek may be the 5,000, the brigade that's going to be pulled out of Germany if Ramstein is next. Look, the MAGA morons keep saying America first. We shouldn't have any troops in Europe at all. Where do they think a lot of the flights that are going to Iran originate from? Ramstein, from Germany. And in fact, it's a hub for the Middle East and for Africa. But if you're somebody who's, functionally illiterate and you don't read and all you do is listen to Fox News, Donald Trump, and the far right-wing nutcases, you don't know that. You just think that we should clear out of everywhere, really, especially Europe, those no good, freeloaders, pull all the bases out, and that will be fine. If we have to do something somewhere else in the world, well, it's America. We can do whatever we want. We'll just send, an aircraft carrier fleet over there. We don't have that many, and I'm sorry, it takes a long, long time for an aircraft carrier to get somewhere. And what do you do when you're there? Like in the Persian Gulf, they can be taken out by drones. The point is, Germany specifically has served as a logistical hub for the United States since the end of World War II for over 80 years. It is critical for projection of power, for defending our interest, not just European interest. It was mostly there for us, the United States. But the MAGA, the far right people under Trump, his cult, don't realize that. The ones that do realize it have another agenda. We've talked about it a lot, whether or not they're getting funded by Putin or indirectly or directly, they are promoting his agenda, which is, as you said, not the destruction of NATO, the dissolution, the chaos and the dysfunction of NATO, because populists, Jonathan, and dictators need an enemy. You've got to have an enemy. So they'll weaken NATO to the point of uselessness, but it'll still be there and it'll function as the enemy for Putin and China, but more or less Putin.
This is it. Autocrats and kleptocrats function in the absence of strong institutions backed by, I would say, some sort of political and financial morality. And talking about morality in geopolitics is not considered, people sort of laugh it up. There's no such thing as morality in geopolitics. I kind of differ, and Benjamin Tallis, who's been trying to build a movement and a think tank around that idea, I think has some good points, because unless you base your foreign policy on strength, but also on conviction, then you are ceding that space to the kleptocrats, the autocrats, the ones with no principles. And this is the biggest problem with Rutte and others. It's all very well not getting involved in this war and that war. It's all very well not pushing back and either remaining neutral or, putting just enough in to tick the box. But what you've done there is you've ceded that ground to those that have no principles, Putin and others. But I think Ukraine and now Hungary showed that is not inevitable, that in Hungary you can have principled conservatism. Now, of course, the new guy's going to have to show that he's able to stick with that for a couple of years and not get corrupted. But I think it's possible to have principled leftist politics. It's principled to have conservative politics. The real battle I think we've got on our hands is those who believe in open debate, level playing fields, sets of rules that are not gerrymandered, that are commonly agreed. And it's between them and those who are minded to absolutely warp the system to their own personal and sectional interests, kleptocrats, autocrats, thieves, and grifters. And unfortunately, if you pit that lot against a bunch of box-ticking managers, well, they've got no chance. We need real leaders to step up in this space.
Well, the problem is, and you've touched upon it, is yes, you can be a principled right-wing individual, conservative, if you will, a principled left-wing individual, but it's when they cross the line and they become radical. Whether it's left or right, is when the problem starts. And the other problem, as I see it, that we're going to have to, as a world, not just America or Europe, deal with for the foreseeable future is, of course, the internet and social media. Even our own Constitution here, and I've said this many, many times, was not up to the task of what's going on today. It was written 250 years ago. We have to rewrite our constitutions, our laws, our policies, the way we do business, especially in democracies, because the laws as written today in most countries, most democracies, were written, of course, prior to the internet and especially social media. I've said this from the beginning. The number one area, number one reason why we're in the situation we are today is social media. We've always had nuts. We've always had grifters. We've always had presidents that aren't worth a damn. And thieves, murderers, you name it. But we never had the internet. We never had the social media. We never allowed these cranks, these idiots, to have such an audience immediately and draw together millions and millions of like-minded morons, dangerous people. We do now, and it's going to get worse. So governments have to really deal with that, rewrite their laws. We need enforcement of our principles, of our morals and our ethics. We don't have that in the United States. We have always left it to the good nature and morality of our leaders. Well, we can't do that because we don't have moral leaders anymore in this country, at least not in the Republican Party. We need a new constitution. We really do. We need an enforcement mechanism to force them to do the right thing.
That's right. And there's a couple of things that I think have gone disastrously wrong. And you could say the same in Russia. There's, different mechanics there. One is you need term limits. This war would not be happening on this scale if Putin was limited to 2 terms and then he's done. That would also put a limit on the amount that can be stolen, because you will always know that your successors can bring a prosecution against you. You can't warp the whole system in your favor. That's why this idea of 2-term limits in the US, I think, is one of the foundation pieces of democracy, because it is in some ways less important who you vote for. What's more important is the ability to eject a bad leader or just have change. Change will allow the population to go about solving
problems. That's not at the local level. It's only at the presidential.
That's at the presidential level.
Yeah, we have 500-year-old senators and Congress people.
Yes, exactly. And it's the same with the judges as well. I mean, the idea of politically appointed lifetime judges, it's insane. From my point of view, it is insanity. And we can see the gerrymandering of that when you had one of the senators interviewing the confirmation hearings of the Trump-appointed judges. And they were asked, was the 2020 election stolen? Do you agree that Trump could run for a 3rd term? And his appointees were like, I don't know. I'm going to have to get back to you on that. No, guys,
Yeah.
this is not a complicated set of questions.
No, I just saw that interview again.
I mean, it's
that hearing rather. Yeah.
Before we sign off and go on an absolute,
we're not going to sign off.
Rant.
We're doing a 24-hour marathon, folks. We're going to be here, and so you stay with us. No, that's not true, but it would be interesting.
We don't have term limits in the UK, but again, when it gets to the third term, I mean, most prime ministers start making some fairly batshit crazy decisions, including Margaret Thatcher and the poll tax, including Tony Blair and his, going down the Iraq War rabbit hole. Although there's other reasons for that, his messianic sense of mission and all the other kind of stuff that goes along with it. Let's turn briefly back to Ukraine, because we've got this truce that isn't a truce in the Iranian, in the Gulf. You've got Trump declaring the war over exactly to meet the 60-day limit on his power to wage war without approval. Interesting that he should still think that maybe is slightly important. So he wrote the letter saying the war's over. Hey, 2 days later, boom, we're all off again. Is it a new war? I don't know. It's an amazing way.
Hegg says the 60-day doesn't apply. He said, Hegg said since it's a ceasefire, that 60-day law doesn't apply to him or to them.
Yeah, and they could perhaps make the case that Iran kicked it off again. So actually, this is a new conflagration. It's not, but they can probably get away with that. Then you've got Putin unilaterally declaring a ceasefire, which of course is hilarious, for his own Victory Day, which actually is a key part of the window dressing of his regime. His regime, which is trying to genocide Ukraine, erase it from the map. The irony, the ridiculousness of him asking unilaterally for a ceasefire from the nation he's trying to erase, it doesn't get more mad than this. Just before we joined, I also heard that, they're now desperate to try and get some form of at least peace over Moscow for that one day of the year. They've brought air defense systems from around the country, leaving so many strategic objectives undefended. Now they're offering full exchange of prisoners. If only Ukraine doesn't send drones in. Russia may think that this is projecting weak strength. To my mind, this is projecting the most extraordinary weakness, and it is demonstrating that it is Ukraine that is calling the shots now.
Boy, would I love to see some real explosions, some real fireworks in Red Square on
I would
on 9 May.
People won't like this, but I think St. Basil should be spared because it is an extraordinary example of it. It's actually a piece of world heritage. So,
absolutely,
I mean, some of those, the Kremlin was built by Italians anyway, and
what do they know?
What do they know? I mean, you could take out one of those, and there's a couple of ugly 19th century buildings. Take some of that. Lenin's mausoleum,
without the
that
Kremlin.
Could go.
St. Basil, stay there. But
hit
the Kremlin,
the big department store. Why not? But I mean,
no,
but
that
would be spectacular.
Come on. Well, we'll talk about that later. But I really want to see some fireworks in Moscow. In was it 4 days?
The optics of that would be spectacular. Say a flamingo crashing into the building that used to be the Lenin Museum.
Let's leave on this optimistic note, since you are my go-to Russian expert. What do you predict?
Did you know this? Did you know this fact? The first time I went to the Lenin Museum on Red Square, when it was still the Lenin Museum, it's not now. I don't know what it is now, but it's a big, a Slavophile kind of red brick building at the end of Red Square, and then they rebuilt a little archway, which is a sort of little medieval church archway, which had been pulled down by the Soviets so that the tanks could get through it. It didn't wear out the tank tracks. It's a great reason to destroy your medieval heritage. But anyway, inside this Lenin Museum was a very rare Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost. Did you know that Lenin had a freaking Rolls-Royce? I bet you
did not.
Yes, he did.
I did not.
So there you go. That's what world communism
capitalist
means.
in the West. Okay, what your prediction as the Russian expert? What's going to happen on May 9th in terms of what Ukraine's going to do? What are they going to do? What's going to happen, Jonathan?
I think they've been hitting Moscow in order to just disrupt the preparations and strike fear in. And it's had an effect in that most of the parades around the country have either been, scaled down or cancelled completely. So they have already ruined Victory Day for Putin. If he has some token parade on Red Square, I would suspect the Ukrainians would allow him to get away with that, but they may well hit the strategic objectives around the country that now are undefended.
That's what I'm thinking.
This is a bonanza for that. And I think what Zelensky's done, he's queued it up because Putin says, no, we're declaring a 2-day ceasefire, 8th and 9th. And Zelensky said, well, we're declaring a ceasefire as of now. And if you break it, I'm not so sure about your ceasefire. So I think it's a very clever move here. He's creating the circumstances where he could say, well, you guys didn't really respect our ceasefire, so I'm afraid your ceasefire is off. And but I don't think that will necessarily hit Moscow. I think it's open season on Russian logistics, weapons factories.
I agree with you. The Ukrainians
kind of
never do what they're expected to do, especially by the Russians. I think they're going to go around Moscow, say, fine, have a nice, scaled down Victory Day parade. We're going to hit all your other logistical hubs and oil refineries and, whatever we feel like that are now undefended.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is what we're going to see. And of course, it is strategically the correct thing to do. And it fits very well with how Ukraine operates anyway.
Yeah.
They have gone out of their way to try to hit military targets only. I think there's no other war in history like it. Unfortunately, in the media and even amongst pro-Ukraine experts, it's positioned like I think it's Julian Robka, who sometimes gives some good stuff. Sometimes I find it a little bit like, but he just said, this Ukrainian drone that hit an apartment building in Chibuksarai or somewhere, I think it was. This is bad Oxford, it's Ukraine. They need to be very careful. Are you freaking kidding me? Are you actually kidding me?
Yeah.
Russian air defense deflects a drone into an apartment building, either accidentally or even intentionally. And does that mean Ukraine needs to stop hitting Russia?
Yeah, I think that was in Moscow City, in their main financial district, one of those really super high rises.
Oh yeah, take that one out. I mean, that financial district is part of the war machine.
Yes,
take it out.
I thought that was brilliant. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. All right. Well, let's end on an optimistic note, meaning that Ukraine is not going to probably hit Red Square on 9 May during the Victory Day parade, but they're going to hit pretty much every other target of opportunity because they can now reach everything up from St. Petersburg to the Urals. Yes, they can. Nothing is safe. I mean, once they hit Perm, and as I said to some people on the channel, I've been to Perm, and a couple of flamingos will probably improve it no end. Yeah, I was going to say it would probably look better. Yeah,
it's an absolute shithole. But
all right.
Yes, sorry, Perm. It was twinned with Oxford. Now, when you drive into Oxford, you see all the towns it's twinned with, and then a place where it's been scraped out, and that was Perm twinned with Oxford. Well. Yeah, we won't be having any exchanges with them anytime soon, unless it's heavy caliber payloads.
No. Jonathan, are we back here at the same time tomorrow?
We are, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So, because I think we're going to have to wrap this up. So,
we're going to wrap
again, same time tomorrow, which is 10 a.m. Eastern and 3 p.m. UK time for another episode of The Dictators. Before we go, I just want to blow my own horn for the folks that can and want to do it. I am having another live stream on my channel in a little over an hour at 12 p.m. Eastern time on protectingtherepublic.com. So those of you that can and want to, and I hope some of you do, please go to protectingtherepublic.com where I will be doing my own solo live stream. Other than that, Jonathan, last words. Other than that, we are all done for today.
Yes, we are done for today. There was one comment there about Stalin's brain being preserved, and actually it does seem like his brain was removed to try to sort of figure some stuff out. So whether that remained in a jar to this day, I don't know, but it was removed. And this is one of the comments in here. And what it was found to contain after death was what's called major atherosclerosis. That's a condition that may well have fueled his extreme paranoia, suspicion, and cruelty. But maybe he was just an asshole. Who knows?
Well, I think he for sure was that at the very, very least.
Yes.
So, wow, that and Lenin's Rolls Royce, interesting stuff.
Lenin's Rolls Royce, oh my goodness, one of his favorite objects, apparently. So there, man of the people.
Oh my God! So capitalism got him in the end. That's the end of it for today. also for us. Join us here tomorrow, please, 10 a.m. if you are so inclined, and we hope you are 10 a.m. Eastern and 3 p.m. in the UK. Jonathan, we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. See you tomorrow.
Take care, stay safe, and stay sane, folks. Stay sane.